Okay, when you are, sir.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hey guys, we should be live at this point. Please give me a 1 in the chat to let me know that the audio is coming through. And I'm here tonight with Thunderous One. Thunderous, what have you been up to?
Well, I haven't been much. I've just been busy at work. I'm watching the events of the world as they unfold. But if anything, I've been keeping a particular eye on the advancement of atheism in many areas of society. Obviously, the LGBTQ maps drag, but also something that you interestingly mentioned on the show, that your last show with reference to Hitler and Christianity, and that was about Canada and its euthanasia advancement. So I've been keeping my eye on those sort of things and moved slightly away from Islam because, to be honest, I think all the points are covered on that now. I don't think there's much really left to cover to expose it.
Okay, so wait. I'm told there is echo, so can you just speak again, please? Is echo?
Hey, yes, so are we there? Is the echo?
Does that fix the echo, guys?
Are we still there?
Yeah, so guys, let me know if this will echo, but yeah. So, in one sense, yes, Islam has been dealt with. I will be doing some new material on mysticism, theosophy, and on the occult within Islam, so that is coming up. Still echo. So echo with me or echo with Thunderous? Slight echo. That's okay. I'm going to put on headphones for this one. Okay,
shall I speak again? Shall I take the Shahada? Maybe the echo will disappear with that.
The Shana Na would be better, but apparently the echo was only with you. Guys, do we still have echo? Thunderous, anything? Just to say again?
Yeah, so shall I take the Shahada in order to get the echo to go away with, or shall I just...
Because look, I think... Actually, no, I think people just need to realize that Allah works in mysterious ways. And we just have to... We just have to come to accept that, that Allah works in mysterious ways. Okay, he says it was from Thunderous, thinks it's gone now, so I've swapped your audio channel out for a different one. Okay, we're good. So hey, it's really nice to have you back on the channel. We've been talking about it, and somehow it never happens, so let's do this again next week. Everyone likes you.
Yeah, to be honest with you, just before we start, I just want to say I have actually missed... being on the show with you. I've missed the audience and the audience comments. I missed, having the input that with the items that you present. So, it'd be good if we could start getting things going back again. And I know the audience have said some very kind things. So everybody that's in the chat, I want to thank you very much for the kind comments you've made over the years between Lloyd and myself.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, you definitely are a favorite. So, hey, everyone. So welcome, John Scott, Horse, Crystals, Gent Z, Yaakov, Allah knows best, Sutlifian report. He is very funny, Sutlif. God does that, but Allah, the little God. Yeah, Kush, Martyr Me, XYZ, thank you all very much. Villainous, most welcome. Ungas, and Time Phaser, and others. Yeah, thanks, guys. So good to see you. All right, let's jump into this one. So this is talking about Hitler and Christianity. So this should be the final episode. I have 16 more slides to go, and then right after this, in 1 hour, I have to be on with Sam Shamoon to talk about atheism. So yeah, unfortunately, I did send Thunderous the slides, but for some reason, he just told me right at the start that he did not access them. There was some issue with access, so he may not be as well prepared. But let's see. I mean, it's just great to get your input. One atheist online pointed to that picture and says Hitler was a Christian, and I pointed the original and he didn't say. Right, Martimi, thank you. Okay, guys, so this is the last slide we ended off at. Okay, we'll just pick this up. So Hitler was born to a practicing Catholic. That is true. His name was Clara Hitler. He was baptized in the Roman Catholic Church, and his father, Alois Hitler, was a freethinker, which typically means atheist. Right? And he was skeptical of the Catholic Church. And Time Phaser says the commentary that Thunderous adds is great. All right, yeah, I agree. In 1904, he was confirmed at the Roman Catholic Cathedral in Linz, Austria, according to John Willard Toland. And we're going to return to this Catholic cathedral, okay, the very cathedral where he was confirmed. We're going to go back to that cathedral in another slide coming up. We're going to find out what his plans were for that cathedral. And let's just say it wasn't going to remain a cathedral. According to John Willard Toland, witnesses say that his sponsor had to drag the words out of him almost as though the whole confirmation was repugnant. And he said, his biographer says that he carried within him its teaching that the Jew was the killer of God. The extermination, therefore, could be done with no conscience, since he was merely acting as the avenging hand of God. That would be like the Muslim way of doing things. Rissman notes that, according to several witnesses who knew him, right, and who lived with him at one time in Vienna, he never attended Mass or received the sacraments after leaving home at 18. Krieger claims that Hitler had abandoned the Catholic Church, while Hitler's last secretary, and we covered a few pages of her, said he was not a member of any church, and she said other things as well. And Otto Strasser said specifically Hitler is an atheist, right? And he had sympathy towards Rosenberg's paganism. So, Thunderous, your thoughts on all of that?
It sounds very much like Muslims today. He was born into a situation where he perfunctorily went through the motions and there was nothing more than a Catholic by rote.
Good point. Yeah, fair point. Right. So we ended on this slide last time. So I like to do a short review. So this is Hitler, A Study in Tyranny by Alan Bullock. Maybe Thunderous, do you want to read? Because hold on, I'm not sharing. Should I share my screen with you, Thunderous, so that you can see what's going on? You know what? I'm going to... Yeah, so you can see in real time what I am showing. I'm going to show the entire monitor. And there you go. You should see my screen now. So in a speech in the early years of his rule, Hitler declared himself, "I'm not a Catholic, I'm a German Christian." We've already spoken about what the definition of German Christians were. These were heretics that made up their own religion, their own personal Jesus. And the German Christians were a Protestant group that supported Nazi ideology. Your thoughts, Thunderous?
Yeah, it's what you mentioned from me. It was just like made in their own image, very much like a lot of Christian doctrine or organizations where the brand of Christianity is made in their own image in order to further advance their own ideology. Nothing new here.
Yeah, I think we've shown, and I can show, that socialism was a ripoff of Christianity. It was a heresy of Christianity, as is even atheism.
Yeah, but without the God. They just plagiarize all the moral laws and co-opt them in or graft them in. Yeah,
no, I'd agree with you. So it's mix and match. It's pick and mix theology. So Hitler and the Nazi Party promoted non-denominational, positive Christianity. We've already previously defined positive Christianity because this positive Christianity isn't the same as what they called negative Christianity, which is whatever you follow. And they rejected traditional Christian doctrines, such as the divinity of Jesus. So, Thunderous, if you reject the divinity of Jesus, does that make you a Christian?
Of course not. Jesus in John 17:3 says, "This means everlasting life. They're taken in knowledge of you, the only true God, and of the one whom you sent forth, Jesus Christ." And you've got other things like John 3:16. So you can't have Christianity without Christ. I mean, that's just a contradiction.
I mean, it's called Christianity. Why?
Because you follow Christ.
Good grief, and it's called Lutheranism because why?
I'm going to take a stab in the dark on this. Is it because you're following Luther? And I don't mean Lex Luthor.
Is it called Mohammedanism? Why?
Now this one, you've really got me on this one. Can I phone a friend? Can I phone Ella?
Yeah. Calvinism, but we'll talk about that in the future. So positive Christianity is not positive, it's not Christian. Yes, Villainous, correct. In Hitler's eyes, Christianity was a religion fit only for slaves. He detested its ethics in particular. So Christian ethics he did not abide by. Its teachings he declared was a rebellion against the natural law of selection by struggle and the survival of the fittest. Thunderous, you know this topic better than I do. So what do you make of that paragraph?
I think what they're trying to do there is graft in the ideology of atheism, which is predicated on Darwinian evolution and the survival of the fittest and the natural selection. It's all that kind of language that we've seen coming out from the 1850s.
Right, and the natural law of selection, that is Darwinism, that is atheist, that is materialistic, correct?
Yeah, it is. It's what I call, it's my own phrase, I call it Darwino atheism. Some people will say it's a portmanteau or a franken-word or a misnomer or whatever, but, Islamophobia, homophobia, transphobia, well, if you can invent these words, I'll invent my own, Darwino atheism.
All right. And survival of the fittest, are these by any means Christian precepts?
Absolutely not. It's to be Christian is to be equal. But survival of the fittest shows there's a hierarchy of the strongest having in subjection to them the weakest.
Doesn't Jesus say the strong shall be first?
Spiritually strong, possibly, but not physically strong.
That was a corruption of a biblical verse, because he says the first shall be last and the last shall be first and the meek shall inherit the earth, right? So
yeah.
So this is a violation of the biblical. Sorry.
Yeah, because Jesus says there is one Christ, but all of you are brothers, showing the equality amongst the congregation.
Yeah, love thy neighbor as you love yourself is not survival of the fittest. It's not the law of selection. So yeah, and Bullock wrote that Hitler believed neither in God nor conscience, but found both justification and absolution in a view of himself, echoing Hegel, who was a spiritual father of Marx's ideology, Marx's atheist socialism, of Hegel's view that heroes were above conventional morality. This would be the conventional morality of the day, would be Christian morality, the Ten Commandments. Hitler was above the Ten Commandments, and that the role of the world historical individuals, such as him, are the agents by which the will of the world spirit, the plan of providence, is carried out. Now, what is eugenics? Yes, XYZ, thank you. So it sounded like he copied this dominance of the Aryan from Darwin. Yes, correct, Villainous. Your thoughts on this paragraph? Because again, this leads us back to... Yeah.
This is a typical example of where they're trying to get God out of the equation and put man as God. So you replace God with a man, and the man himself becomes God, which is pretty much the argument that the Bible's talking about from Genesis 3:1-5 anyway, where you remove God out of the equation, you put man as God. He's just doing the same thing here in a different guise.
And the world spirit, that is definitely not the God we know. This could be the monad. Who knows how he defined this God for himself? Because if he's a Gnostic, he's doing it at whim, right? And it can change tomorrow too. So the plan of providence, but this again is Hegelian, this again is Marxist. It's about the telos, the purpose of time, the purpose of matter. This is their assertion, the idea that fate is a living force embedded within matter with a purpose, with a mind. And this is again not Christian by any means. The world spirit
Sorry, I was going to say, because when you start talking about destiny and fate and such things, you're basically saying that there's no such thing as free will then.
That's also true, yeah. So there's a reason why people thought, and have said that Hitler was atheist. I know people want to deny that, but Hitler himself said he is a materialist. Atheists are materialists. So there's reason to believe that he was. And many atheists have explicitly started religions, which seems to be a contradiction in terms, but atheism doesn't make sense anyway. Following his early military success, Hitler abandoned himself entirely to megalomania and the sin of hubris, an exaggerated self-pride, believing himself to be more than a man, above conventional morality, above the Ten Commandments. Man is God. Once the war was over, wrote Bullock, Hitler wanted to root out and destroy the influence of the churches, though until then he would be circumspect for political reasons. Right. Yeah. Any comments before I move on, Thunderous?
Well, the idea, I think they have to get rid of Christianity, because by removing Christian law, you're in effect then you're opening or setting a blank canvas to reinvent morality and who is the one to, if you like, organize what is moral and what is immoral. We're seeing that today with reference to the LGBTQ and other things that are taking place, abortion, euthanasia. You're seeing that morality blinded, because if you remove Christianity out of the way, then you're opening your avenue to invent your own sense of morality. Christianity is the one voice that is stopping the influence of it. It serves as a bulwark. You remove Christianity, then you allow these things to come in, and then in effect man becomes God, setting his own subjective laws. And an example of this would be somebody getting arrested for silently praying in their head outside of an abortion clinic. And normally when these people are arrested, who are they? They're Christian. What does that tell you?
In the UK, man, the UK has turned anti-Christian. That's what it tells us. Yeah. So, guys, photo propaganda. So this is a photograph of Hitler leaving the Marienkirche, or the Church of Mary, right? So, caption, a photographic chance event becomes a symbol. Adolf Hitler, the supposed heretic, leaving the Marienkirche, that's a typo, the Marienkirche in Wilhelmshaven. All right. And they put the cross right above his head, right there. Let's have a look. This is the image. This is the church today, right? As you can see here. Hitler, leaving the Marienkirche in Wilhelmshaven. Hitler often distanced himself from Christianity privately and publicly. Hitler and his regime persecuted Christianity and tried to undermine its influence in a host of ways while he was in power. The caption was altered to distance Hitler from Christianity, and the cross above his head was later removed. So the caption with the photo was altered, and the photo was photoshopped. We'll see. Hitler was alienated from Catholicism early on, and he never attended church services except for funerals and weddings on a few occasions. When he expressed support for Christianity, well, it was a political tactic for propaganda purposes. Let's have a look. Right, this is Hitler, wie ihn keiner kennt. Okay, this was Hitler's photographer. This was Hitler's official photographer called Heiner Hoffmann. This is a 1938 edition of Heiner Hoffmann's Hitler's official book, right? Official book of photography. And notice here, the cross has been removed. Photoshop. So after 5 years in power, Hitler no longer needed to pander to Christians. The photo caption was altered to Adolf Hitler after sightseeing at the historic Marienkirche in Wilhelmshaven. Your thoughts on that, Thunderous?
Well, this happens today as well. This is nothing new. Photoshopping in order to promote an ideology or an agenda, or in fact photoshopping to disprove something or to prove something. This happens today in the media. It reminds me of, probably not relevant to this subject, but page 124 of Zombie Science by Jonathan Wells, where in order to try and prove the tailbone, a Photoshop of a baby with a tail was invented in order to prove that toxic. So this happens in today as well. This is nothing new.
Tails could be true, dude. I'm from Africa. I'm the first one in my family born without a tail. So I'm proof that evolution does happen. Right. So anyway, so these are official photographs. Okay, these are official photographs of Hitler, and that was a joke, by the way. Historical Christianity, welcome. So let's look at some examples of anti-Christian sentiment. So after a funeral in Berlin, Goebbels wrote in his diary that Hitler was scoffing at the funeral mass that he had just been to. So that's Goebbels in his diary. In August 1924, Hitler spent a year in Landsberg prison after the beer hall putsch to overthrow the Bavarian government. Rudolf Hess, in jail with him for the same crime, had a conversation about religion with inmates. Later on, Hitler had a private conversation with Hess, which Hess recorded in a letter to his wife right after it occurred. Okay? Hitler told Hess that he had to camouflage his anti-Christian sentiments for the sake of political tactics. Hence, when expressing his support for Christianity, it was a political tactic for propaganda purposes. Right? In Mein Kampf, my jihad, I don't know why they translate Kampf, kämpfen, as struggle, because kämpfen means to fight. He discusses this point and remarks that a particular Austrian politician that Hitler had known about when he lived in Vienna from 1907 to 1913, a man called Georg Ritter von Schönerer, had been a prominent pan-German politician. Schönerer led a campaign against the Catholic Church called the Los von Rom movement, or the Freedom from Rome movement. Schönerer's political career took a nosedive once he did that. People turned against him. I'm not saying the Catholic Church, people were so unhappy with him for turning against their religion, for turning against the church, he lost all public support, and the guy disappeared into nothingness, right? Hitler said he wanted to avoid the same mistake. Your thoughts, Thunderous?
Oh, absolutely. It just reminds me of your third bullet point there, where it talks about Hitler told Hesse he had to camouflage his anti-Christian sentiments for the sake of political tactics. Do we not see that with Islam at the moment, where it manifests itself in governments, particularly in this country, in Scotland and England and other places? They're hiding their Islam, if you like, and by promoting that Islam is a religion of peace, religion of tolerance and such. But we all know even entry-level understanding of Islam will teach you that it's quite the opposite. So it's hiding its Islamic agenda by saying it's peaceful. This is yet again another tactic that we've seen before, we've seen since.
And Villainous says that sounds like compulsory lying. Yes, this is, it's dishonesty. We also know from Hitler's secretary that Hitler often quoted Nietzsche. And I believe I did talk about that. I did talk about his secretary, the statements that she made, and also his, we're about to do Nietzsche. 1934, Hitler at the Nietzsche archive. Nietzsche was a philosopher that was highly anti-Christian, an atheist that was heavily against God, right? Friedrich Nietzsche, 1844 to 1900, a philosopher known for being anti-democracy, anti-Christianity, as well as anti-Jewish. He expressed a belief in a superior master race, just like this guy. The Superman who would embody these qualities, and Nietzsche referred to himself as an antichrist. Fantastic. And this is Nietzsche. This is the Nietzsche archive, and of course this is Hitler visiting. In the German press, the caption read, "The Führer, before the bust of the German philosopher whose ideas have fertilized two great popular movements, the National Socialism of Germany and the Fascist movement of Italy." So let me see. That makes Hitler a Christian, don't you think?
Speechless.
Yeah. So he revered a philosopher that was highly influential to the Nazis and to the fascists. Fantastic. And we're supposed to believe that this guy is now a Christian. So can you guys start to see, again, this is the 5th episode, how false the idea that Hitler was. Now, very simply, people shout, but Hitler was a Christian. Okay? And then this is simply a sophist tactic to imply a million things. Ask for details. Okay? Where did he go to church? Right? Who was his priest? Right? Did they take part in the sacraments? Did he go to Christmas masses? Be specific. Ask them for details. There are no details. He was never in church. After 16 or 18, the guy didn't go. None of his friends or his colleagues said he was Christian. Yes, Thunderous?
I was just thinking that, the lengths that atheists and Darwino atheists go to in order to try and attack, as a minimal commitment, a belief in intelligent design, and by extension to the biblical narrative, how they'll, consistently bring up false arguments like the action of the nation of Israel against the Canaanites or the Philistines or the other wars that they were involved in, or the actions of the nation of Israel and their kings. Had they done the same research with integrity on their own ideology, then they would see that they've got lesser foundation to stand on than, say, somebody who believes in intelligent design. It goes back to that phrase, not only do I have to teach you what I believe because you're clueless as to what I believe, but I have to teach you what you believe because you're utterly clueless, if not more so, in what you believe as well. And this is another example where your research is showing that how ignorant, stupidly perverse or hopelessly ignorant the mind and brain capacity of the atheist is.
I'd agree, yeah. So Nietzsche says in a book called The Gay Science, in Christianity, neither morality nor religion come into contact with reality at any point. Nietzsche, of course, is the famous author of the statement, "God is dead." This connection may also be why Hitler is associated with atheism, because of his association with Nietzsche. So yeah, he was fond of Nietzsche, and yeah. So the Christian idea of God as a God of the sick, God as spider, God as spirit, is one of the most corrupt conceptions of God the world has ever seen. And all the while, this pathetic God of Christian monotheism, instead acting as if it had any right to exist, like an ultimatum and a maximum of God-creating energy, of the human creator spiritus, this hybrid creature of ruin, made from nullity, from nothing, from concept and contradiction, who sanctions all the instincts of decadence, all the cowardices and exhaustions of the soul. Hitler loved this guy. He loved these quotes, So, Thunderous, do we think this is a slam dunk that Hitler was a Christian?
Quite the opposite, man. I hadn't read this comment before, but by Nietzsche. That what it does, it brings to mind for me the Apostle Paul's word about philosophy being an empty deception, and this is what it is. It's just a deception, a very well crafted intellectually put forward argument against God, but a deception nonetheless.
Yeah, and Time Phaser says gay science is real popular in the US right now. Yeah. I guess they're really trying to push the idea of the hot beef injection, right? So yeah, what can I say? So, Jaden Harvey, welcome. El Lobo. The Hitler's Popes are just made up by the KGB. Yeah, I've covered the Hitler's Pope thing already. That was last week or the week before. I went through that in 2 episodes in quite a bit of detail. Yeah. Okay,
Nietzsche's dead, but God's still alive. What does that say about Nietzsche, eh?
That is true. Yeah, Hitler, Nietzsche died in misery, so good. Goebbels and Rosenberg, close associates who spent a lot of time with Hitler, remarked about his anti-Christian attitudes and conversations in their diaries. In Hitler's monologues, which is his table talks, there's a lot of anti-Christian material. On December 13th, 1941, Hitler gave a monologue mocking Christian teachings. He mocked the fall, the virgin birth, redemption through death, and the crucifixion of Jesus. And here, being weighed down by a superstitious past, men are afraid of things that can't yet be explained. That is to say, of the unknown. If anyone has needs of a metaphysical nature, I cannot satisfy them with the Nazi Party's program. Time will go by until the moment when science can answer all the questions. Thunderous, is that an atheist statement?
If ever there was one.
So maybe there's reason why people have said in the past Hitler was an atheist. So for the audience, can you see now why the common view, people want to say, well, Hitler was a Christian, because maybe they don't want to admit that Hitler, like the Marquis de Sade, who gave us the words sadism and sadist, were atheists. Marx, Stalin, Lenin, Mao, Pol Pot, all bona fide atheists. Maybe there's an embarrassment in the atheist community. Thunderous?
There's more than that. There's a principle called communal responsibility or community responsibility, and that is where you identify yourself with an ideology, you by therefore are an associate of that ideology. For the atheist, the Darwino atheist has to remove themselves from the political past of the manifestation of where atheism has taken root. Maoism, Stalin, Hitler and Pol Pot. Those are the big four atheists of the past 100 years, and the deaths that they have caused run into the hundreds of millions. The atheist has to remove themselves away from that identity because they will be guilty by association with the identity of the of atheism, because that is the root cause of those murders. So the atheist has to remove themselves away from it, but it can't. That's the
of course. So it's not opportune. Hitler says, it's not opportune to hurl ourselves now into a struggle with the churches, just like von Schoenerer. The best thing is to let Christianity die a natural death. A slow death has something comforting about it. The dogma of Christianity gets worn away before the advances of science. Religion will have to make more and more concessions. Gradually, the myths crumble. All that's left is to prove that in nature there is no frontier between the organic and the inorganic. When understanding of the universe has become widespread. Hey, Carl Sagan, could that be Carl Sagan? When the majority of men know that the stars are not sources of light, but worlds, perhaps inhabited worlds like ours, then the Christian doctrine will be convicted of absurdity. These are Christian words if ever I heard them, right?
The interesting thing with that is you've actually seen that happening in the last 78 years. Adam and Eve were real people up until about, say, Darwin and evolution and it moving forward. So now some churches will refer to Adam and Eve as allegorical. Job's not a real person. The flood did not exist. Adam and Eve don't exist, and by extension, then the Adamic fall and sin entry into mankind did not happen. So when it says that gradually the myths crumble, you're already seeing that those things are crumbling. And now today, how far has it gone? Well, how many churches now allow the LGBTQ maps drag into the churches saying, well, love is love or anything?
That bothers me, man. That bothers me.
So abortion is now tolerated in some churches. Euthanasia is now seen as being accepted in some churches. So when it talks about gradually the myths crumble, it is an incremental process. in order to allow this to happen. So these things are not happening overnight. They are designed to happen over generational periods. And we're at that point today where there's very much little for a Christian of real faith, where, you know, they don't have much in the way of, like I say, to be a Christian, you don't really have to believe that much in the Bible now in some organizations.
You just got to
comment on.
Yeah, sure.
John Scott said something in the chat. It says, that sounds almost like the Quran says about Jesus' death on the cross. That's crazy. The interesting thing about that is, John, is that when you look at Darwin atheism and you look at Islam, and all the other religions, they have to get Jesus, the cross, and the Adamic sin out of the equation. All of them at some point remove that. And that is the end game agenda of these faith systems. Get Jesus out of the equation and the Adamic sin and the ransom by his shed blood.
Right. Yeah. So let's look at Hitler. So guys, we have total on 93 slides, and we're at 83, so 10 slides to go. We probably won't finish today, but Thunderous, would you be available over the weekend or next week to finish if we don't get done?
Yeah, next week will be better. And if you could send me some slides that I could pre-read beforehand, that would be appreciated. Because
in 25 minutes, I have another stream on Sam Shamoon's channel. So Horse says, a little voice tells me that had Hitler wound up on top, his regime would have taken a more active role in the attempted demise of Christianity, which was the statement made by his leadership and by himself, that they were going to destroy the churches once they got control of Europe. Yes. So, like the French Revolution, part 2. Sadly, yes. Right, so Hitler and the Jews as a race versus religion. Now, I believe this dichotomy of Hitler viewed them in a racial manner, whereas Luther viewed them in a religious manner, I think that's very likely to be a false dichotomy. Luther just hated Jews. Whatever he may have started with, at the end of the day, he just hated them for being Jews. He stopped being, shall we say, focused on details, and he just hated Jews. Very bluntly. I'll do a show on that, and it's going to look very bad. So, this is Nazi propaganda. The caption, baptism did not make him a non-Jew. So you've got a fat Jew with his fat wife, you've got the Catholic priest, okay, and you've got two pretty German women, right, wearing, notice the brown skirts on that, so that's a very German image also. And he's got his Bible, he's got his rosary, and he's staring at the chicks, ignoring his wife, right, his ugly wife. That's the whole story, right? So, the religious solution to the Jewish problem was conversion. Hitler thought that was the worst possible solution. The Catholic Church wanted to obviously do evangelism, convert Jews to Christianity. He said, no, this is a very bad thing. He saw Jews not as a religion, but as a negative race. Their bad moral traits were biological. Jews are deceitful. Jews are lascivious. Jews are greedy. All the negative stereotypes he thought were biologically ingrained traits. He did not want to import these biological traits into the German gene pool. Hence, the Jews had to be wiped out. This Nazi propaganda picture has a picture of a Jew and his wife coming out of church. He has a Bible and the rosary. And he says here, you can't get rid of Jewishness by converting. As we saw, he rejected the Old Testament, right? The Nazis rejected the Old Testament fully. And the writings of Paul, the Jew who put fabricated ideas into Christianity, corrupting it from the beginning, an Islamic teaching. Hitler thought Christianity had been corrupted from the very beginning. Now, Hitler did have good things to say about Jesus, but his picture of Jesus was not the Bible view of Jesus. It was remade the way Islam, the Gnostics, Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, and so on have done. Thunderous.
It's interesting that if anybody's got the time, there was, I don't know if it was Channel 4 or BBC, they made a docudrama about, it's called Conspiracy, and it's about the discussion of the extermination of the Jews in World War II. And they were talking, and this is recorded from the notes as well, so it's a fact-based drama. I forget who the stars were. And it talks about getting, in a legal aspect, about Jews that were full Jews, Jews that were, say, 50-50 because they're bred with non-Jews, and, you know, the differentiation of percentage of blues, the bloodline, and where they would move them to in Germany. So that there had a very real outworking in the Nazi regime just towards the end of World War II, which the BBC made a drama about, and it's called Conspiracy.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay. But text heavy, so smaller text. So it became clear that Hitler intended to imprison the Catholics in their own churches. They could celebrate Mass and retain their rituals as much as they liked, but they could have nothing at all to do with German society. Catholic schools and newspapers were closed, and a propaganda campaign against the Catholics was launched. That's in the book An Honorable Defeat by Anton Gill. By the latter part of the decade of the 30s, church officials were well aware that the ultimate aim of Hitler and the Nazis was the total elimination of Catholicism and of the Christian religion. Since the overwhelming majority of Germans were either Catholic or Protestant, this goal had to be a long-term rather than a short-term Nazi objective. That's in The Response of the German Catholic Church to National Socialism by Michael Feyer, professor of history at Marquette University. Under the leadership of Rosenberg, Bormann, and Himmler, backed by Hitler, the Nazi regime intended to destroy Christianity in Germany if it could and substitute the old paganism of the early tribal Germanic gods and the new paganism of the Nazi extremists. William Shirer, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, a History of Nazi Germany, page 240. So yeah, someone commented on that, and yeah, I have covered that, and I will do a different series on this as well as we go forward. The Nazis planned to de-christianize Germany after the final victory. An Honorable Defeat, Anton Gill, A History of the German Resistance to Hitler, Heinemann Mandarin, page 14 to 15. Your thoughts, Thunderers?
No, I've got nothing to add on there.
Yeah, I mean, this is quite blunt and obvious. So why don't atheists ever quote us this? This is disconfirmation of their very, very weird ideas. So
because atheists are brought up like Muslims. They read a tract, they read a propaganda tract to go after Christians and anybody that has a form of theism. They don't do any introspection or any research into their own belief system. That's why they don't quote it.
Okay. A Lobo mentions a movie called The Cardinal. She says the Nazi scenes were very telling about the anti-Catholicism of the Nazis, which screws up a lot of modern Hitler Pope conspiracy theories. I have a series done, I think 2 weeks ago. I did a show. It's about 45 minutes long on Hitler's Pope, discussing that whole idea, looking at the evidence, and then I did it as well in the previous show on this series as well. I covered that in detail. Was Nietzsche as vile a hater of Jesus as was Luther? Yeah, Luther I'm still unpacking. It's a very slow process. A lot of it's in Latin and a lot of it's in Old German, which means you have to read this Gothic text. It's a pain in the butt. So yeah, but I'm working on it. Luther, well, we'll get into Luther. That's yeah. I don't think it's kind of like apples and oranges. It's not as easy to answer as I would answer it if I could, but I don't think it's that simple. It seems no exaggeration to insist that the greatest challenge the Nazis had to face was their effort to eradicate Christianity in Germany, or at least to subjugate it to their general world outlook. Dole Marshall, Germany and Modern History, page 365, University of Michigan Press. The objective was to either destroy Christianity and restore the German gods of antiquity, or to turn Jesus into an Aryan. Jack R. Fischel, Historical Dictionary of the Holocaust, page 123 in 2010. Oh, the Jews. I don't know. How did Nietzsche view the Jews? Probably not well. I know he hated them, supposedly, but I don't know the details. I haven't looked into the details. Consequently, it was Hitler's long-range goal to eliminate the churches once he had consolidated control over his European empire. So, eliminate the churches once he had Are you getting a common message here, like a repeated pattern, Thunderous?
Is it remove the churches?
It's something about churches here.
Yeah. Get rid of Christianity, remove the churches, go back to. It's almost like getting back to some kind of sentimental belief system where I dare say what he's trying to do is unify the German peoples under a banner of the previous gods, whereas Christianity at the time in Germany, you had Jehovah's Witnesses, you had the Catholic Church, you had Protestants. They were all very divided. But by going to the previous gods under the old Germanic pastimes, you will have united them under one banner. So it's almost like a galvanizing process.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like something a Christian would do, or a Catholic.
Exactly.
So there is no doubt that in the long run, Nazi leaders such as Hitler and Himmler intended to eradicate Christianity just as ruthlessly as any other rival ideology, just like the communists do with Christianity, even if in the short term they had to be content to make compromises with it. Roger Griffin, Fascism's Relation to Religion in Blamira's Cyprian World Fascism, a Historical Encyclopedia, Volume 1, page 10. So guys, yeah, I'm not finding the evidence that Hitler was a devout Catholic. If some atheist could just give me the evidence who his priest was and all that stuff and all the details, just give us a well laid out argument, you know. So Yulefest, the origin of the Aryans, and Christmas. In the years leading up to World War II, the Nazi regime suppressed and persecuted Christian youth organizations. Despite the Concordat, a treaty signed by the Vatican and the German government in 1933, which guaranteed the rights of Catholic organizations, the Nazis banned Protestant and Catholic youth groups. The Hitler Youth became the only option for young people seeking to participate in organized activities. In fact, they couldn't meet on Sundays because the Nazi Youth met on Sundays, so everyone had to go to the Nazi Youth. Hitler was practicing scientism. Yeah, of course he was. Doesn't it make him a little bit atheist at least? As part of their efforts to undermine Christianity, the Nazis often scheduled Hitler Youth meetings on Sunday mornings, preventing young people from going to church. In 1937, the regime arrested hundreds of Protestant pastors who had joined the Confessing Church, a movement that opposed Nazi interference in church affairs. That's Dietrich Bonhoeffer. The Nazis sought to de-christianize traditional festivals such as Christmas. Do you think a good Christian would want to de-christianize Christmas, Thunderous?
Well, good. Mainstream Christianity don't want to de-Christian, remove that at all. No, of course they don't. But then neither does commerce either. There's a lot of money to be made.
Yeah, well, so Hitler's press chief, Otto Dietrich, the guy who called him an atheist, if I recall, claimed that the dictator disliked Christmas and would often go for a drive to avoid the festivities. These measures were part of a broader campaign to promote Nazi ideology and suppress dissenting voices, including those of the religious. Christmas Eve had nothing to do with the birth of Jesus Christ, but celebrated the winter solstice and the rebirth of the sun, a pagan ritual. The swastika, the new cross, was an ancient symbol of the Big Dipper in its 4 positions: in the spring equinox, the summer solstice, the September equinox, and the winter solstice. And Santa Claus was declared a Christian reinvention of the Germanic god Wotan, Odin, in Norse mythology. Your thoughts, Thunderous?
Well, I just couldn't help but go back to your first two bullet points, which talks about the Hitler Youth. You see very much things going on like that with Islam, taking the youth out of sort of like not just with mainstream education, but taking them to mosques in order to inculcate them and coerce them or train them into the Islamic way of thinking, the Islamic world viewpoints of how the world is supposed to be in their image. This is what's happening there. The interesting thing, somebody made a comment in the chat about the United Nations. I just want to add on to the comment that's on the United Nations with Davos. They were talking about, because of the centralization of the digital world, that what they're looking to do now is have a standardized education system for the rest of the world that can be taught electronically in real time. So by extension of what we're seeing with Muslims and what we're seeing with the Aryans here, and now with the LGBTQ intolerance, it seems that by extension the United Nations want to do that via Davos for the rest of the world. Just an interesting point.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, we can see, people have mentioned in the comments that a lot of the political developments we see, like Mr. Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and all of these things are, just extensions of these old ideas, just repackaged.
Exactly that.
Yeah. So guys, if you enjoy this, please do like, do share, do comment, do subscribe, leave your comments and so on. Please let people know about this and let them understand that there is no basis to the idea that Hitler was a Christian. That is complete. It's easier to make a mess than to clean up a mess. It's easier to throw paint and throw dirt than it is to clean up the dirt. But this is definitive. Right. This clearly demonstrates that the claim is utterly false. There is no evidence for it. Ask them for evidence. Make them prove it. So, let's see. The Nazis' War on Christmas. This is the History Channel for the Nazis' War on Christmas. They're literally tried to take the Christ out of Christmas by Aaron Blakemore. This is 2018. Okay. So you can see. I mean, man, even if the History Channel is making it obvious, I mean, some atheist needs to learn how to read. So Christmas, nature's violent struggles. So we have another six slides to go, 7 slides. During World War II, the Nazis put out a series of propaganda books called Kriegsweihnacht. Oh, sorry, this is a typo, and I pasted it because it came out of one of these old 1940s books with a weird Gothic text. Kriegsweihnachtsbücher, okay, or war Christmas books, designed to wean Germans away from their traditional Christmas celebrations and to re-paganize them. Thunderous, are we supposed to re-paganize people into Christianity? I mean, I thought that's the same thing. I thought Christianity was pagan. Why would they have to leave Christianity to become pagan if they're the same thing?
That's a very good question, and I'm glad you've asked it.
Yeah. Interestingly, these books contained zero mention of Jesus. No mention of Jesus. A Christmas book with not a single mention of Jesus. Isn't that a little odd, Thunderous?
Can you see a pattern emerging yet?
I don't know. I'm from Africa, dude. Our education is a little sketchy. So help me out here.
Well, from what it is what it is, isn't it? Try and remove Jesus out of the equation at any point. I mean, this goes back to what Muslims and Darwinian atheism is all about: is get Jesus out of the equation of thinking, because it's the remove. But what it is helping mankind, or making mankind try and recognize themselves that their tendencies are not sinful. Their tendencies, that inner fight that we have with us, that Paul spoke about, that's actually natural. Whereas when you look at Christianity and the reasons for Jesus' death, it shows that those tendencies that we've inside us are unnatural, and we need to recognize that. But the world isn't in that image anymore. It has to remove that in order for the world that we have today to flourish, which is pretty much what we've got today. And like I keep going back, the LGBTQI drag maps. There you go.
Yeah, LGBTQFU movement. Right. Yeah. So these books had no mention of Jesus and no religious content. They focused on German law, family traditions, candles, and oddly, trees, which is a very pagan symbol. It's kind of weird, but trees are a very pagan symbol. Right. Yeah, Alobo says it's strange. If Hitler was educated on the Catholic liturgical calendar, he'd be having a war on something every day. But okay, I have no idea what that means. So, and also, Villainous says, notice how Western elites hate how traditional African countries are running the culture in their countries. They don't like the LGBTQFU movement. They don't. Because, yeah, I can tell you, I'm from Africa, and that stuff is like, no. The Nazis claimed that these traditions had originated from pagan festivals. So atheists love to push Nazi propaganda. At least they've got, we've got them pegged on that now. And they sought to promote this idea to the German people. This was part of Hitler's social Darwinist ideology, which emphasized the triumph of the strong over the weak. In one of the front pieces of the Christmas book that they issued every year, there was a quote from Hitler that said, "All of nature is a violent struggle between strength and weakness, an eternal victory of the strong over the weak." Is that a message from Mazda 123 or maybe Mazda 626 in the Bible, Thunderous?
Not from any Bible I know. Maybe the Muslims have got a different version of the Bible. It's not from any version I've ever read.
Yeah, so all of nature is a violent struggle between strength and weakness, an eternal victory of the strong over the weak. That sounds a little Darwinian. Am I wrong, Thunderous?
You're not wrong, not in the slightest, not on your Nelly. It sounds very much like eugenics as well.
Oh, it certainly does. Deutsche Weihnacht, okay? With the swastika over a tree, right? Weihnacht 1944 with this guy. I don't know what he's doing, but what's it saying here? Die Kindheit mit. Die Kindheit mit. Das Christkind nahm die Kindheit mit. I'm not sure what. Okay. And Weihnachtsgrüße aus der Heimat. Okay, from home. So, yeah, this is very Christmas. That just says Christmas all the way through. I'm not sure where this one figures in, but fine and well. Okay, this was far from the traditional Christian message of peace on earth and goodwill towards men, because I thought that was the plan. The Nazi Christmas propaganda was an attempt to promote their ideology and to further their war effort. Still, many Germans continue to celebrate Christmas in the traditional manner with religious content and messages of love and peace. Just like the Nazis, the Soviets weren't able to completely eliminate Christianity. They competed with it. They had to form their own religion to compete with it.
Or they try to hijack it and graft it.
Correct.
And then as soon as they've grafted it in, they'll slowly dilute it and remove it.
Yeah, that's why we have the KGB Orthodox Church in Russia now. So, yeah. So, now, reading the Old Testament in the Third Reich. Now, look at this little bit of Photoshop they've got going on here. This is a fascinating. Okay. It says, "Hey, der Mann da, das Kruzifix etwas weiter nach rechts." So, hey, you over there, move the cross a little bit more to the right. Okay. The German Christians were a nationalist Protestant organization that believed Adolf Hitler and the Third Reich to be God's latest revelation to the world. I find it odd that there's the constant emphasis on Hitler's Pope, as if the Catholic Church, but the whole German Christians movement was a Protestant movement. It's just, yeah.
Okay. I do believe it probably is God's latest revelation of the world. If you're looking at it from the point of view of 1 John 5:19, or Revelation 12:7-9, then they've probably got a truth there. So it's a God with a small g.
Yeah. So, November 13th, 1933, Berlin Sports Palace. One of the huge banners that hung that day from the balcony read, "The German Christian sees the gospel in the Third Reich." So, in other words, remember, they believed they were the real Christians. Like Muslims claim to be the real Christians, they believe they were the true Christians, that they had the true message of Christianity. Understand? And the gospel, the Third Reich, was the implementation of the gospel. At the same time, they rejected the gospel and Christianity as weak, but yet they co-opted it. So they were literally speaking out of both sides of their mouths, contradicting themselves, but at the same time, they realized they had to use, as you said, co-opted Christianity for their purpose. Reinhold Krause, who in a rousing speech called for a second German Reformation to complete the unfinished work of Martin Luther. So Reinhold Krause at this event said that the guys who were saying that the German Christian sees the gospel, the fulfillment of the gospels in the Third Reich, said that we need a second German Reformation to complete the unfinished work of Martin Luther, because this was where Martin Luther's German Christian doctrine was going. So the implication was that Luther had not gone far enough in making the church German. The German Christians would have to throw out the Old Testament. And the entire agenda contained 6 points, 2 of which demanded the dismissal of all priests who were unable or unwilling to see themselves as Nazi fighters. Just like happened in the French Revolution, all priests who would not, renounce their vows and become atheists were killed. And the forced retirement of the non-Aryan clergy. So they had to give up their jobs. They had to stop working. Many were thrown in concentration camps. Taken together, it was clear that the German Christians wanted a church that took its gospels from the teaching of Adolf Hitler. Remember, they were going to replace the Bible with Mein Kampf. Hitler was the new Jesus, the new Messiah. Thunderous, your thoughts?
Well, it sounds like what Muhammad did with Mecca. He became the new Messiah over in Mecca at the time, in Medina. There's no difference, is it?
Yeah.
The interesting thing is, it talks about in your third point down, unfinished work of Martin Luther. It's interesting that they would use that kind of language, the unfinished work of Martin Luther, because pretty much then they're taking hold of the bus and they can steer it in any direction they want to from their own presuppositions.
Yeah.
So they could claim it's the unfinished work of Martin Luther, but it's just a claim that gives them the arguments or the narrative in order to take it, steer history in the course that they want to.
Right. So racism, hatred of all things Jewish, and you need to understand Martin Luther was the template for German hatred of Jews. His work was central to the way that the Nazis treated the Jews. Central, pivotal, critical to the way that they treated the Jews. And the Nazis implemented Martin Luther's plan for the Jews, effectively to the letter. So, and the replacement, so their hatred, there was racism, hatred of all things Jewish, and the replacement of the suffering servant Jesus with the warrior Jesus. And this formed the church's new faith. That's from Röhm and Thierfelder, page 40. That's Stroud D., reading the Old Testament in the Third Reich, Journal of Genocide Research. Okay, same devil. Yeah. Sorry?
They have to have Jesus as a warrior. It's pretty much when Muslims are arguing over Deuteronomy 18:18, they have to have Muhammad and Moses as warriors. You can't have that flimsy, peace and love and goodwill to all men Jesus. You have to have a warrior as your leader.
Right. Correct. Good point. And Muhammad is that warrior, right? That's the warrior religion. And Hitler, he viewed Islam as a warrior religion. So Hitler had a keen interest. So this was Germania, the new Germany he was going to rebuild. Germany without churches. His plans for the cities did not involve building churches for some reason. Do you think churches are important in Christianity? Thunderous, would you build the odd church if you're a Christian?
You'd have to, wouldn't you? By implication, if Christianity is true, then you would have to build a church for the ecclesia.
Yeah, there you go. So Hitler had a keen interest in architecture and of the reconstruction of German cities that were ravaged by the war. He had several architect associates, including Albert Speer, principal architect with whom he collaborated in designing models of various German cities with a focus on Berlin and their potential reconstruction plans. One glaring omission from these plans was the absence of churches. So they were going to rebuild the cities with no churches. Unless they possessed significant architectural importance, churches were were not included in the rebuilding program, which was yet another attempt to diminish the influence of Christianity and the church. Only architecturally significant, and there's a handful of those major cathedrals that would be architecturally important. Otherwise, those were gone. Now, I've got to stop in a minute, so after this slide, I'll show one more slide. We mentioned Linz. He spoke of where he was baptized and confirmed in Linz, right? Ernst Hanfstaengl, a friend of Hitler during his early political career, who later turned against him, claimed that Hitler was to all intents and purposes an atheist by the time I got to know him, although he still paid lip service to religious beliefs. So his friend says Hitler was for all intents and purposes an atheist. And he says here, Adolf Hitler, this is a gigantic task posed to us. However, I am so much a materialist that I regard it as far more important than worrying about what religions are predominant in what countries. So, your thoughts on this before I go on?
No comment there, but if you're an atheist or a Darwinist, there is nothing beyond the material anyway, so he has no choice but to say he's a materialist.
Yep. So I'm going to show one more slide, guys. The very next slide is my final one, then I will quit because I'm supposed to be with Sam Shamoon, and I hope that goes as it should without issues. Okay, this is the church, the Postlingberg Church in Linz, okay? So he wants to burn it down. The observatory that I will have built at Linz on the Postlingberg, I can see it in my mind, a facade of quite classical purity. I'll have the pagan temple razed to the ground. He's going to burn it to the ground. This is where he apparently, in Linz, okay? This is where he was confirmed, where they said that he didn't want to do it, right? And the observatory will take its place. Thus, in future, thousands of excursionists will make a pilgrimage here every Sunday. They'll have access to the greatness of our universe. That sounds like Carl Sagan talking. And Carl Sagan is no friend of the Christian church. The pediment will bear this motto: the heavens proclaim the glory of the everlasting. It'll be our way of giving men a religious spirit, of teaching them humility, but without priests. Man seizes hold here and there of a few scraps of truth, but he couldn't rule nature. He must know that, on the contrary, he is dependent on creation. And this attitude leads further than the superstitions maintained by the church. Christianity is the worst of the regressions that mankind can ever have undergone. And it's the Jew who, thanks to this diabolic invention, this evil invention of Christianity, has thrown man back 15 centuries. I give you the last word, Thunderous.
I have no last word looking at that. I think the quotes are self-explanatory as to the mindset of these people.
Yeah, and this is where he apparently got confirmed. I believe this is when he was confirmed. So he wants to go and burn down the church where he was confirmed and turn it into an observatory, into an instrument of science. I mean, does that sound like he's a devout Catholic and he's really interested in churches, considering he wants to build cities with not a single church? He wants observatories with no priests. Does any of this speak of evidence for Hitler being a good Christian?
Not in the slightest, not at all.
Yeah, and Villainous says that sure does sound like Carl Sagan. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Doesn't sound like, certainly doesn't sound like anything Christian at all. Carl Sagan was very anti-Christian. So Thunderous, I'll give you the last. I'll give you until I get the message from Sam. So let me just send this. But your thoughts?
No, yet again, it's amazing the different subjects that you go into and your ability to collate information and present it to your loyal audience with Islam and with atheism, because the world scene that we're having at the moment is a war between two mindsets or two ideologies, and their focus is against the Bible and the biblical narrative. You have Islam on one side and you have Darwino atheism on the other. And I call it Darwino atheism because 99% of people who claim that they're atheists, when you knuckle them down, they're actually evolutionists. They believe in Darwinian evolution. So if that's your foundation for the structure of the universe, or the chaos in the universe, because it all came from nothing, then that's why I refer to them as Darwino atheists. And that's the war that's going against the mind of those that take the biblical narrative as a reality. So this information here about the Nazi regime, Hitler, and its atheist roots, is another example, like Islam, where when you talk to a Muslim, you pretty much, anyone that's speaking to a Muslim pretty much knows more about Islam than the Muslim that they're speaking to. So not only do you have to teach them what they believe, you have to teach them what you believe too. And it's the same thing with the Darwinian atheist. The Darwinian atheist is utterly clueless as to what they believe, any more than they have any idea of what you believe as well. So this information that you're presenting for your audience is, it's very much needed at this moment in history, because the Darwinian atheist mindset, which is prevailing over the world in the education system and politics and commerce and political structures like the World Health Organization, United Nations, and other agencies that send out Trojan horses into other countries. This information is vital, because people need to know the roots of, when they're making comments, what their ideology is responsible for under the principle of communal responsibility.
Now, so Gaz Allen left a message, but for some reason my bot deleted it. It says silence doesn't help us. And I agree, silence doesn't help. We need to speak. Use your voice. You have the facts. You have definitive evidence. Learn this material and don't believe the lies. Don't let them destroy your foundation, your faith, your confidence. These people are lying to you. They are uninformed. They are misinformed. They are propagandists. They are wrong. You can, with confidence, approach them. Ask them for evidence. When they run out of propaganda after their third or fourth lie, you will have a mountain, 50, 60, 100 facts to throw at them. Ask them for evidence. Make them prove their case. And they cannot. They cannot. Make them suffer. Embarrass them. So guys, I have to go. But Thunderous, thank you very much. Shall we meet again on Monday? I only literally have like 5 slides to go, but let's finish this on Monday with another discussion.
Yeah.
And then we can maybe delve a little into atheism. You can talk about that as well. And I will do a talk on Darwin and Hitler, and it's going to be fascinating. It's going to blow people's minds, I promise.
Well, thank you, everybody. So I'm sorry I didn't get the opportunity to revise much of the material, in fact, any of it, but hopefully I'll have done some for Monday. But thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you, everybody, for your kind comments, and look forward to speaking to you again soon, Lloyd. Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm going to join Sam Shamuna, but Thunders, thanks for coming on. It's been great having you on. So maybe Monday, would that be good? Monday evening? We try that? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good, man. Thank you. Yeah, great to have you on. Guys, thank you all very much. Thanks for being here. I hope this helps. Like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. And yeah, see you somewhere else very